Golden buzzer moment nobody expected. Hotel California mic sparkles. The theater was alive with energy that night, buzzing with anticipation as the crowd waited for the next contestant to step on stage. Families, friends, and strangers filled the seats, their conversations blending into a low hum under the bright lights. The judges, seated at their panel, leaned back with practiced confidence, prepared to witness yet another performance in a long line of hopefuls. But in the shadows of the backstage, there stood a boy whose life was about to change forever, though no one in the audience or on the panel could have possibly predicted it. His name was Adrian. He was 16, thin from years of hardship, his clothes plain, his sneakers worn, and in his hands he clutched an old guitar that had belonged to his late father. He was nervous, his heart pounding in his chest, but beneath the fear there was something stronger, a quiet determination that had carried him through a childhood filled with struggle. Adrian's mother sat in the wings, her face lined with exhaustion but glowing with pride. She had worked countless hours in a small bakery just to keep food on the table after Adrian's father passed away, and she had always encouraged her son to chase the music that filled his heart. When the stage manager called his name, Adrian's knees nearly buckled. He whispered a small prayer under his breath, then stepped forward into the blinding lights. The audience fell silent as they took in the sight of this young boy with his beaten guitar. One of the judges asked with a curious smile, "What are you going to sing for us today?" Adrian's voice wavered as he replied, "I'll be singing Hotel California." A murmur went through the crowd. The song was iconic, a classic beloved by millions, and one that was nearly impossible to deliver with justice. The judges exchanged skeptical looks, unsure if this boy was ready to carry the weight of such a legendary track. But then Adrian strummed the first chord, and the air shifted instantly. His fingers moved carefully across the strings, coaxing out a melody that was both familiar and new. His voice rose softly at first, fragile yet filled with a haunting beauty that held the audience captive. Each word carried not only the lyrics of the song but also his own story, his grief for a father lost too soon, his longing for a better life, and the hope he still held onto despite everything. It was not just a performance, it was a confession, a window into his soul. The audience grew quieter still, leaning forward as if afraid to miss a single note. By the time Adrian reached the chorus, something magical had happened. His voice no longer trembled, it soared. It wrapped around every listener, tugging at their hearts with its raw sincerity. Mothers in the crowd wiped away tears, fathers nodded with unspoken respect, and children stared wide-eyed at the boy who seemed to transform before their eyes. The judges, too, were visibly shaken, their skepticism melting into awe as they listened. One judge, known for his harsh critiques, covered his mouth with his hand as his eyes glistened with tears. Another clasped her chest, whispering to herself that she had never felt a song hit her this way before. And the third judge, overwhelmed with emotion, leaned forward, hands trembling near the golden buzzer. By the time Adrian reached the final verse, his voice cracked with passion, his fingers pressing the strings as though pouring every ounce of himself into the guitar. The theater seemed to hold its breath in reverent silence. When the last note lingered and faded into stillness, there was a heartbeat of quiet. Then the entire hall erupted into thunderous applause, people leaping to their feet in a standing ovation that shook the walls. Adrian stood frozen, his chest heaving, tears spilling down his cheeks. He had given everything, and he did not know if it was enough. But then, in the midst of the cheers, the unexpected happened. The judge who had been holding back his tears slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti exploded from above, showering the stage as the audience screamed with joy. Adrian dropped to his knees, overwhelmed, clutching his guitar as tears streamed uncontrollably down his face. His mother sobbed backstage, covering her mouth with her hands as she watched her son's dream come true in the most miraculous way. The judges stood, applauding, their eyes wet with emotion. One of them leaned into the microphone and said, "Adrian, that was the most heartfelt version of Hotel California I have ever heard. You didn't just sing a song. You told us your story, and you made us all feel it." From that night, Adrian's life was never the same. His performance went viral online, millions of people replaying the moment when an unassuming boy with an old guitar had brought the world to tears. Messages poured in from across the globe, people who said his voice gave them courage, who confessed his song had reminded them of loved ones they had lost, or inspired them not to give up on their own dreams. But with fame came new challenges. Adrian was suddenly thrust into a world he had never known, one filled with expectations, critics, and the constant pressure to live up to the moment that had made him famous. There were nights he lay awake in strange hotel rooms, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he was truly good enough. Some producers tried to push him into singing songs that did not fit his style, into chasing trends rather than singing from the heart. At times he felt lost, torn between the boy he had always been and the star the world now expected him to be. But each time doubt threatened to swallow him, he remembered the promise he had made to his mother, and the dream his father had once nurtured. He would not lose himself. He would sing only with honesty, only with truth. As the competition advanced, Adrian continued to pour his soul into each performance. He sang songs about hope, about grief, about love and resilience. He faced technical struggles, sleepless rehearsals, and moments when his voice faltered under the strain. But he always returned stronger, fueled by the belief that music was not about perfection but about connection. Round after round, he won the hearts of judges and audiences alike, not by being flawless, but by being real. In the final round, Adrian stood once again under the golden spotlight, his old guitar still by his side. The crowd cheered his name, but he closed his eyes and thought of home, the smell of bread from his mother's bakery, the sound of his father's laughter, the nights he had practiced until his fingers ached. He strummed his guitar and began to sing, his voice carrying not just notes but the very essence of who he was. When the performance ended, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. Adrian was not only a singer. He was an artist, a storyteller, and a living reminder that dreams can rise even from the humblest of beginnings. When the host announced him as the winner, Adrian broke down once more, clutching the trophy in disbelief. But the most powerful moment came when he stepped off stage and placed the trophy into his mother's hands, whispering, "This is for you. For everything you sacrificed." She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face, whispering back, "No, my son, this is for you, for your courage, for your heart, for your voice." Adrian's journey did not end with that show. He went on to use his platform to help others, creating programs for underprivileged children who dreamed of music but lacked the means. He performed around the world, yet never forgot the small bakery, the old guitar, or the night when a song turned his life upside down. Every time he sang Hotel California, people remembered not just the music but the story of a boy who poured his heart into a dream and touched millions. The golden buzzer moment nobody expected became a legend, retold across generations. And Adrian himself became a living testament to the truth that greatness does not come from perfection, or wealth, or fame. It comes from the courage to stand under the light, vulnerable and unafraid, and to share your heart with the world. And so, the story of Adrian is not only the story of a boy who stunned the judges. It is the story of all who dare to dream, who rise above their hardships, who sing even when the world doubts them. For in the end, the golden buzzer was not just for his voice. It was for his spirit, his resilience, and his reminder to us all, that no matter where you come from, your voice matters, your story matters, and sometimes, one song can change everything. Adrian had not always dreamed of standing on a stage. His earliest memories were of a small home in the outskirts of Manila, where the roof leaked when it rained and where his father would sit with him on the porch, teaching him simple chords on an old guitar. His father had loved the classics, songs by the Beatles, the Eagles, and Elton John. It was his father who first played Hotel California on a crackling radio one late evening, humming along with a smile. Adrian had been just 6 years old, his small hands trying to mimic the rhythm on the strings. His father had laughed softly, guiding his fingers, saying, "Music is not about how perfect you play, son. It's about how much of yourself you put into it." But life had not been kind. When Adrian was only 9, his father fell ill. The sickness came suddenly and drained their family of what little savings they had. Nights were spent in hospital corridors, the beeping machines and faint smell of antiseptic forever etched into Adrian's mind. His father passed away in the quiet hours of a rainy morning, leaving behind the guitar and a promise unfulfilled. Adrian's mother wept silently, but she never let her grief silence her strength. She worked tirelessly, baking bread in the early hours of dawn and selling it in the market so she could keep her son in school. Adrian grew up quickly. He helped his mother as much as he could, waking before sunrise to deliver bread to neighbors, his small hands balancing trays heavier than they should have been. But in the evenings, when the world slowed down and the markets were closed, Adrian would sit with the guitar. He would strum quietly, repeating the lessons his father had given him, his fingers blistered but persistent. And slowly, music became more than a hobby, it became his escape, his solace, his way of keeping his father close. In school, Adrian was shy, often teased for his worn clothes and his quiet nature. But every time the school held an event, teachers noticed his voice. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it carried emotion beyond his years. One teacher, Ms. Ramos, pulled him aside after hearing him sing in class. She said, "Adrian, your voice is a gift. Don't ever hide it. One day, it will take you places." At the time, Adrian had smiled politely, not daring to believe her. When news of the televised talent show reached their neighborhood, Adrian's mother encouraged him to audition. "This could be your chance," she said gently, her hands flour-stained from a long day of kneading dough. Adrian hesitated. He had never performed for more than a small classroom or local event. The thought of singing before cameras, judges, and a massive audience terrified him, but his mother's eyes were filled with unwavering faith, and he remembered his father's words, "It's about how much of yourself you put into it." With trembling hands, he filled out the audition form. The day of the audition was overwhelming. The city was loud, the venue crowded with hundreds of hopefuls carrying instruments, wearing glittering outfits, and rehearsing scales. Adrian stood quietly in the corner, holding his battered guitar, feeling small among the sea of talent. Some contestants looked at him with pity, others with curiosity. He overheard whispers, "He doesn't stand a chance. That guitar looks like it will fall apart. Hotel California, that's too big for a boy like him." When his turn came, Adrian nearly backed out. His knees were weak, his palms sweaty. But then he saw his mother watching him from the side, her tired face glowing with pride, and he took a deep breath. He stepped onto the stage, his heart pounding louder than the applause. The lights blinded him for a moment, but he held onto his guitar like an anchor. And then, as the first chords of Hotel California left his fingertips, the world seemed to fade away. The judges' expressions changed from polite curiosity to astonishment. They had expected a nervous boy fumbling through a song far too advanced for him. Instead, they heard a voice that carried heartbreak and hope, pain and beauty. Adrian was not just singing, he was living the song. Every lyric was colored by the nights he spent missing his father, the mornings waking early to help his mother, the struggles that had shaped him. His voice cracked at times, but the cracks only made it real, raw, unforgettable. By the time he reached the haunting guitar solo, tears streamed down faces across the hall. The judges, hardened by years of auditions, found themselves vulnerable, their walls shattered by the sincerity of a boy they had underestimated. When the golden confetti burst after the buzzer was hit, the audience roared, but Adrian was too overwhelmed to hear it clearly. He fell to his knees, clutching the guitar, sobbing into the strings. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his father's absence and presence at once, as if the man were standing beside him, whispering, "I'm proud of you, son." The video of his performance traveled across the world within days. Clips of Adrian singing Hotel California filled social media feeds, headlines declared him the boy who broke the judges, and reaction videos poured in from every corner of the globe. But with the sudden fame came immense pressure. Interviewers asked questions about his past, tabloids wrote about his poverty, and strangers scrutinized his every move. Some critics even claimed he was just a one-hit wonder, that lightning had struck once but would not strike again. Adrian struggled with the weight of expectation. In rehearsals, he sometimes broke down, frustrated that his voice cracked under stress. There were moments when he wanted to quit, convinced that he wasn't strong enough for the spotlight. But his mother reminded him gently, "You've already proven your worth, Adrian. You touched people's hearts. That can never be taken away." He pressed on. In each round of the competition, he chose songs not because they were popular, but because they told his story. He sang of love, loss, resilience, and faith. Each performance carried the same vulnerability that had stunned the judges that first night. By the time he reached the finals, he had become a symbol of hope, not just for his community, but for countless viewers who saw their own struggles reflected in him. In the final performance, Adrian returned to Hotel California, but this time, he added something new. He intertwined the melody with a verse he had written himself, a tribute to his father, thanking him for teaching him that music was about heart, not perfection. The audience wept openly, the judges rose to their feet, and when the votes were counted, Adrian was declared the winner. But Adrian knew the trophy was not the real victory. The true triumph was standing on that stage, singing honestly, and proving to himself that he belonged. His story inspired millions, not because he had the best technique, but because he had the courage to be vulnerable, to pour his heart into a song, and to remind the world of something timeless, that music is not about fame or glamour, it's about connection. Adrian's golden buzzer moment became one of the most unforgettable in talent show history. Yet for Adrian himself, it was never about the confetti or the applause. It was about honoring his father, making his mother proud, and sharing his truth with the world. And as he looked out at the cheering crowd, his guitar still in his hands, he whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." Adrian's journey after the competition was not the fairy tale people imagined. Fame came with shadows, long tours that left him exhausted, contracts filled with fine print, and people who wanted to shape him into something he was not. But through every storm, Adrian clung to the guitar his father left behind and the lessons his mother whispered when life was heavy: stay true, stay humble, and sing from the heart. He used his voice not just to entertain, but to inspire. He began visiting schools, telling children from poor neighborhoods that dreams are not measured by where you come from but by how deeply you believe in yourself. He created a small foundation to provide instruments and training for kids who could not afford them, determined to give others the opportunity his father once gave him. And everywhere he went, when people asked him about his golden buzzer moment, Adrian would smile and say, "It wasn't the buzzer that changed my life. It was the belief that my story mattered." Years later, when people remembered his Hotel California performance, they did not just talk about the notes he sang. They talked about the way he made them feel, the way his voice carried the weight of every struggle and every hope. They remembered the tears of the judges, the roar of the crowd, the confetti falling like golden rain, and the boy who stood trembling under the spotlight yet never stopped singing with his whole heart. And so Adrian's story became a timeless reminder, that even when the world doubts you, even when the road is filled with hardship, one moment of courage can open doors you never imagined. The golden buzzer moment nobody expected became proof that dreams do come true, not for the most perfect, not for the most privileged, but for those who dare to stand tall, hold on to their truth, and pour their soul into everything they love. Because in the end, the world does not remember how polished you were. It remembers how real you were. And that, more than the applause, more than the trophy, was Adrian's true victory. Message: never stop believing in your dreams. No matter how small you think you are, your voice matters, your story matters. Just like Adrian, you may have your own golden buzzer moment waiting for you, you just have to step into the light.